everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Cleo and you guessed it right. Today I'm going to test this 5 AIO in my 7950X, the 7000 series from AMD. Now this test is to see which cooler, or should I say which AIO will produce a better cooling solution so that my 7950X will react. For those of you who do not know about how this 7950X work, right, or the 7000 series work, what it does is when you load into Windows and to run any Cinebench and having the CPU load at 100%, it will push to the max temperature, which is at 95 degrees Celsius. From there, it will calculate based on how much cooling your cooler can provide. Then it will draw the power from the motherboard and to push the clock frequency. Before I start on with the methodology, right, I'd like to thank to those people who actually helped me out with all this AIO. I'll start off with Arctic. Arctic have provided me with this 360 Arctic Liquid Freezer too. Thank you very much. Next will be from Deepcool. This is the LS720. Thank you very much, Deepcool, who have provided me with this 360 unit. And this is actually from a friend who have borrowed me his Corsair iCube H150i RGB Pro XT, if I'm not wrong. And of course to Lian, who have provided this 360 Galahad, and to a very good friend, I should say, the regular shop that I patronize, somehow right now become friends. So from Cypher, who have actually provided this Bequiet silent loop too. There are two more persons I'd like to thank. One is Jay, who have borrowed me the Crosair Liquid AIO, and the other one is Yonkit. Without this T30, I don't think this test will ever happen. So thank you very much, Yonkit. The methodology of the test is pretty straightforward. For all the AIO that's tested, right, I will not be using thermal paste. Instead, I'll be using this thermal pad. So this will give a fair judgment to all the AIOs. During the test, I'll be using a R23 benchmark application whereby I will run the 10 minutes throttle test for each AIO. And there will be two runs for each AIO. First will be the original fans, then followed by swapping the fans to the T30 from Fantex. And in the test itself, right, you will be hearing the fan noise of the original and the T30s that is mounted on each and individual radiator itself. Let me bring you to the dashboard and to explain further. As to further illustrate my sharing with you, I'll be testing out all these 5 AIOs in my system with their default fans. And why is this T30 from Fantex in the picture? Well, for all the AIOs itself, which is using the default fan, I can't tell which is actually performing, as in like the build itself, the radiator, the pump. That's why I'm going to make use of this T30 to standardize all the fans in each AIO, and I'll conduct the test and to show the results. Besides this, I will show you the PC components which I'm going to use in this test. As mentioned to you, I'll be using a Ryzen 9 7950X, and the motherboard I'll be using a Steel Legend X670E coming from ASRock. And as for the RAMs, I'll be using a G.Skill Trident Z5 Neon DDR5 with a clock frequency of 6000 CL30. And of course with AMD Expo profile. And as you can see over here in the UEFI itself, I've toggled the Expo profile to run at 6000 clock speed on my RAMs itself. Besides this, on the fan profile, I've set all to full speed. Reason for this, right, since the processor is going to run max 95 degrees at 100 load, so I figured that all the AIOs, I would just set it to run at 100% full load. And when I swap the T30 itself, right, now T30 have this 3-fold profile, which is hybrid, performance and advanced. I will just set to performance but will be running at full speed. During the test itself, you will see something like that with 4 diagrams. This is done this way, as in like the top section, as you can see, this is Crosair. What's the difference? On the extreme left is using the original fans on the radiator, and the right is using the T30 fans. Same goes to another AIO which is listed at the bottom. As you can see, original and T30 fans. So this is how it works. This is a 10 minutes throttle run, but I'm not going to let you watch the whole 10 minutes. Instead, I will cut to the last 5 minutes, because the first 10 minutes, right, in fact, your the temperature on your IHS itself, right, will not be that hot. So I figured that by cutting it to the last 5 minutes, right, this will tell at that moment of time the temperature, and to capture the calculations within the processor itself, and to produce the clock, core clocks, which is the frequency of the processor itself. So take note on the frequency, be it the original or using the T30 fans. Same goes to the bottom with another AIO. Now, in the test itself, I've included the noise test. If you were to see this, right, please be mindful, lower down your volume. I wouldn't want to hurt your ears. So when you see this, right, it means that this is activated, as in like the noise of this with the original fans. And if it toggles to the next, where you have this noise test over here, it means that the noise is reflecting on the T30 fans on this AIO. Same goes to the bottom. Another thing to take note is that during the test itself, right, as you look at the clock frequency, you probably might want to check the power package, how much the processor is telling the motherboard to pull, or should I say to provide. And these are the PPT, TTC and EDC. As mentioned, everything is by default. So if this increases, right, if this increases, it doesn't mean that I've tweaked the PBO2. It is actually by default, the processor is reacting upon how much cooling of the AIO produce, and they will draw. Now, having to say this, right, one last very important point, if you're watching this on a mobile, I don't think you can see all the stats over here. So it's best that you watch this on your desktop at high resolution. Let's begin. There you have it. The results are out, and I'll talk about the legends first. Minimum frequency does not mean the minimum. In fact, what I'm trying to say is to round off what I've seen and captured within the last 5 minutes of the benchmark of every runs. So I'll just round off the figure as in, like, let's say it can run at 4.96, 4.95, things like that. I'll just capture to the next decimal point, which is 4.9 instead of 4.96. So as you can see, right, it's always one figure, or should I say one decimal point. And as for power drawn, right, as mentioned, for the 7000 series on AMD itself, it will just push 95 degrees. So it's very hard to tell what is the best cooler. So the only way to tell is that whatever cooling solutions that you can provide to the processor, it will draw the power off from your PSU, or should I say the motherboard will do the drawing of power. And the higher power you can draw, right, the higher clock frequency it will be. So that's the gauge on how well you can cool the processor itself. As for RPM, these are the fans RPM, be it original or the Fantex T30. With the results shown over here, I was quite shocked. In fact, I've done the test of all these AIOs, right? It's more than 2 to 3 times of each, be it the original fans and the Fantex 30, just to make sure that I'm getting the correct reading. I'm still very mind-blowing that on the top spot itself, right, ranking first is Arctic Liquid Freezer 2. I was expecting it to be around, ranking 3 or 4, to be honest. Based on the fact that I was looking at the cold plate, it's so small as compared to the rest of the cold plate. But somehow, recently I have actually discovered about the cold plate. Now, there is a period of time whereby Arctic have acknowledged that there's something wrong with the gasket inside the AIO that is causing deterioration and causing the performance and such. So they have offered all of us the cold plate. If it's affected between the period of I think it's May 2021 to March 2022. So if you bought the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 during that period of time, right, you are being offered to change the cold plate. They will give you a so-called service kit, which you can do it yourself. Now, besides this, right, another thing which is actually the offset bracket that I discovered, I will explain to you later, and that will explain why lately Galahad and the Corsair H15i does not perform that well. So for those of you actually interested to know how the changes are made on the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2, especially with the cold plate and the offset bracket, I'll leave the URL in my top right hand corner, so you can just view that video and understand what are the improvements. Now, as for Bequiet ranking second and Deepcool third, I believe the cold plate itself, right, is rather big. So let me just show you. Now, based on Bequiet itself, over here. Now, look at the cold plate. The fin stack is so big. Definitely, there will be very good contact on the die itself. On the processor itself. It will absorb all the heat off pretty fast and to dissipate on the radiator. And in addition to it, right, look at the RPMs on the fans itself for Bequiet and Deepcool, these two. They are ramping pretty high and to push a lot of static pressure on the radiator itself, though it's 27mm thick. So with this, say, right, it draw a very good, gigahertz, maintaining at 4.9, which is on Bequiet, and maintaining at 4.8 on Deepcool. Even if I were to change the T30s on this two AIO, look at the frequency, the clock frequency. It's the same, and the drawing power is the same. But if I were to choose, right, to draw lesser power, right, I'll put a T30, that's for sure, because it's running lower RPM, it's quieter. You can witness when you listen to the video noise itself, if you can rewind. And do pardon me, I got to go back to Arctic itself. I will talk about Galahad and the Corsair AIO. Now, for Arctic itself, having the top spot, right, look at the RPM on the fans itself is 1880. In fact, the max RPM on the ARGB fans, right, is 1900. And as compared to the RPM with the T30, unless I ramp this up to 3000, which is the highest profile on the fan setting itself, but running on mid, right, I find that Arctic is running very quiet as compared to T30s. And it draws almost the same. Okay, I have actually done 2 decimal points here. It's only 0.04 gigahertz more on T30s, so I would just leave it as default. Now, on the Lian, Galahad and Crosair itself, right? Okay, on the AM, okay, let me just show you this. Now, on the 5000 series itself, which is the AM4 platform, yep, a lot have witnessed that it does very, very well. I believe the cold plate is sitting directly, or should I say, almost covering the dice over here. But on this round, the AM5 itself, sad to say, it did not perform. And I don't think it's the problem of Galahad, the cold plate. Now, look at the AM5 platform. If you see the die, right, it's not as centered as compared to the 5000 series. The 7000 series, right, in fact, see, the gap over here is more than the gap over here. So I guess that the Galahad did not perform and the Crosair did not perform, right, based on the fact that the fin, I should say the inside fin stack is not sitting correctly, as in like there might be some left off, and that causes some, I should say, some gigahertz loss, and not much, I mean, not a better cooling method to the AM5 platform. As you can see, right, Lian is pretty close with the Deepcool, which is 4.7, and if I were to change to T30s, right, yes, it does pull up by 1 gigahertz, I mean 0.1 gigahertz, which is quite close to the Deepcool itself. So having said this, right, this gives me a suspicion that, you know, the cold plate of the Galahad is not big compared to Deepcool and to Bequiet. I wish I can actually dismantle that, but I wouldn't want to ruin that. That is my only Galahad, I'm so sorry to say. And as for Crosair, right, same thing. The cold plate itself, right, it's not okay. On the AM4 platform, yes, it does help cooling, but on AM5, not at all. I hope you guys have actually enjoyed what I've shared with you, and this are based on my own opinion about the cold plate on the Galahad and the Crosair. By the way, Lian is going to come out with a new AIO, if you guys do not know, probably I would say next year, and I believe it will perform, and once again to take the top spot. And as for Crosair, right, I believe there are other AIOs, like the latest newest version AIO, so that might help. I'm so sorry to say that I can't do all those. In fact, I wish I could do more, and I did try to approach brands like NZXT, MSI, Fantex, and many more, but I got no response from them. The only person that respond to me is from Arctic, from Deepcool, and from Lian. So sad to say this. Anyway, probably my channel is pretty small, that's why. And if you guys can do me a favor, right, share my channel with your friends and try to subscribe. And with this said, right, for those new to my channel, welcome to my channel, and if you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till the next video, take care, goodbye, see ya.